A lot of conversation, Ken, a lot about the A&A report. You've been following this topic for a while, far before the A&A has come out. What are some of your takeaways about the report and how it's going down?
Yeah, so marketers are definitely concerned about the state of affairs between the relationships with themselves and the agencies and the agency holding companies. A lot of this was really catalyzed by the A&A Media Conference last year. Really, this was, if that was the earthquake, these were the aftershocks. It was not earth-shaking in the same way because, again, the groundwork was effectively laid, if I can mix my metaphors here. But I think the specificity in the K2 report is more than enough to make sure that most marketers will explore their contracts, do a little bit more auditing if they have the budget, but make sure that they're mindful of these factors in their negotiations going forward. So no, this is an event where 5 years from now we'll point back to it as a catalyst for whatever shape the industry is taking. It is that big of a deal.
So you've done your own reporting, separate from the A&A. Tell us about how you see the problem.
Yeah. So the problem is I've seen it, and it's very different because as a securities analyst, I have certain limitations. I'm unable to ask individuals inside of public companies about the practices in question. However, I can ask suppliers, customers for different aspects of this. And pretty consistently, I found that yes, these practices in different forms have gone on. And the real issue, as I see it, is somewhere between a misunderstanding, disingenuity, and in some cases, deception. But I think the vast majority of the problem, from what research I've been able to do, is really, it could be a misunderstanding where the agencies genuinely believe that they are working within the limitations of what they are supposed to, namely the language of their contracts. And the marketers believe that the spirit behind the contract is more encompassing than the letter of the contract.
So what's the most egregious aspect that you found?
Well, I've heard multiple instances of media owners being asked to deliver inventory in a third country in exchange for volume commitments in the United States. There are ways to do this, and it would not necessarily contravene any contract. By the way, that's the funny thing about this. The illustrations I think many people have learned about that sound egregious or sound problematic may be entirely consistent with the specific contract that they touch. And so it's not necessarily the case that these so-called bad behaviors are out of compliance with the contract. But the problem is that the presence of these activities do raise broader questions and cause a lot of concern, I think, for all marketers.
What's the impact in terms of the market? Has the market reacted at all? Is it of concern to the investment community?
Well, the funny thing is that stocks arguably traded up a bit on the release of the report, in part because I think there were concerns about much more specific holding companies being called out for specific practices. There were concerns that it would actually illustrate fraud or criminal activity. Now again, in my research, I have come across examples of how there could be criminal or fraudulent activities, but nothing specific like that. So it didn't surprise me that there wasn't anything called out of that nature. But to the extent that there were investors who might have feared much worse, again, there had been some trade press headlines to that effect. It was less bad than feared. The other issue is that there are many investors, if not most, who believe that this is an overhang that has since been removed. That's not correct. This actually has not gone away. As I said, I believe that the report and the subsequent Ubiquity Firm Decisions report that will be coming out, I think will help set the shape, whatever shape that is, for the industry to come. Now, we don't know what that means, and I can lay out all sorts of scenarios, some of which can actually be really good and healthy for the industry. I mean, for example, to the extent that this report fosters more of an open dialogue between agencies and marketers about on the one hand, the excessive cost pressures that marketers are pushing on agencies, and on the other hand, the agencies need to generate revenue to find sources of capital where needed to invest in growing the business and growing ultimately their marketers or their clients' businesses. there can be more of an open dialogue. That's a possibility. Unfortunately, the response from the holding company so far has not been encouraging, but that's not to say that that can't change.